Okay, today I'd like to give you a key to the paragraph diagnostic exercise we did last week to sort of explain, point out some things that you guys said in the discussions that I thought were good, and make sure that you clearly understand how I was looking at those paragraphs, which will help you clearly understand what I'm going to be looking for in your paragraphs. So the strengths and weaknesses of these diagnostic paragraphs, I'm going to be evaluating your paragraphs with the same way. Okay, so first we have our paragraph 1, a paragraph that was painfully too short. And you just look at that and you can tell the shortness is a problem there. I don't think I would ever have a student who seriously turned in a paper that had the paragraph like that in it and seriously thought it was a good paragraph for a paper. They would know that there was something wrong with it. Okay. However, though, someone did point out something good about it. Is that several of you noticed that there was something good about it. Is that, well, one, it had a sense of focus, but being so short, it would be difficult to not have focus in a paragraph that short. However, though, it starts off with a strong claim. It has a good opening sentence. The opening sentence gives you a sense that there's an idea in this paragraph, and it's the kind of an idea that you can make a whole paragraph about. You could focus a whole paragraph on the idea expressed in the first sentence there. And to show you how that could be done, we take the exact same paragraph and we just build it up a little bit more. We develop it a bit more, and so this is a size paragraph. This is more like this is a decent sized paragraph for a school paper. Okay. And so the strength that it has is it's got more detail, and it still manages to keep the focus. Notice here then what we have is that first sentence there is what I would call an umbrella, or I call it an umbrella sentence. That means the whole paragraph can be everything talked about, discussed in the paragraph falls under that umbrella sentence. That sentence covers all the ideas within the paragraph. Okay, that Tacoma is a city of history. All right. However, some people thought that it had some coherence and flow problems, and one person I'm sorry, I forget the name. In the discussion said that a possible revision, and I love this idea of giving a possible revisions to show how something could be done better. It's like you could say something like, after Native Americans came settlers, the first settler being Job Carr. And so that makes a sort of a clear connection between the idea in the previous sentence and the idea in the next sentence. So there's a nice sort of improvement to the flow within the paragraph. So in other words, even though that paragraph was about the size of a decent college paragraph, it still could have more in it. It still seems to need more to it. Even though it's a good size, it still needs more. Okay, which relates to another criticism that some people had, that the paragraph could have more detail, that there are more of the things that could be explained in it. Okay, and so some people thought that some of the things were not as thoroughly explained as they could be. And so again, even though it was a decent sized paragraph, there could be more to it. Also, several people noticed, and this was a great thing to catch, facts like those facts mentioned in the paragraph need citations. The paragraph was obviously the product of research, and so it needs to have citations in it. Okay? So which leads us to the third paragraph, even bigger than before. This paragraph is actually getting to the point where this might be a bit too long for a college level paper. All right, and although I've got sympathy for it, because when I write things, I tend to write things too long. Paragraphs tend to be too long in them. Okay, but this paragraph we've got the same paragraph, but with just even more stuff in it. Okay, and some people there was a sort of difference of opinion on this. Some people thought it had better coherence and flow. Other people, though, thought that was a weakness to it there. Coherence and flow are very hard to teach. They can be very hard sometimes to grasp exactly how to do it. And so, but I think something that people said was good was at the end. It's sort of that part at the, if I can go back, the part at the end there, with especially at the end. Tacoma is so historical it even has the Washington State History Museum. That definitely seems to be tacked on there. Okay, so that's definitely a sort of a breakdown in the coherence and flow. And more people also thought that even though this does have more details and description, it could have even more, that the things were sort of thrown out there and not explained, and it can be confusing to a reader. It's like you're teasing the reader. You're bringing up this possibility, but you're not really talking about it like you should. And once again, also, the thing needs citations. Okay? Kelsey, in discussions, noted that this paragraph is talking about different aspects of Tacoma's history. And this shows you what here's the lesson here that I think this sample paragraph can give you. Those different aspects could have different paragraphs. So the idea of Tacoma is a city of history doesn't have to be a focus for a single paragraph. It can actually be several paragraphs in a row talking about this one idea. And you could focus the different paragraphs on the different aspects of Tacoma's history. This leads me to one of my favorite mottos, one of the favorite things I try to get into students' head, especially in English 102, fewer ideas, more explanation. Students in general tend to be very good with ideas, but not as strong on explanations. Students tend to jam a whole bunch of ideas into a paragraph and not explain things as clearly or as thoroughly as they could. Okay? If you have more explanation in your paragraph, that means you can make those connections within the paragraph that improve flow. If you have more explanation in your paragraph, you can have more details. You can give richer descriptions of things rather than just mentioning them. Okay? So remember, fewer ideas, more explanation. All right? Which brings us to paragraph 4. Now, taking a look at this, you can tell this is one also that's probably too big for a college level paper. That's got too much stuff going on in it, so you're about to hear many of the same things that I've said. Okay? Now, there's one though criticism that people had of the paragraph that I want to disagree with. But what I want to do is I want to show you it's something that you may not have considered. It's something, in fact, you may not even been told in the past is a possibility. And so this might be a new idea to you. So the people said it lacked a topic sentence, and I think what the reason they were saying that is the first sentence in the paragraph was not the topic sentence. Okay, but I want to tell you is that's okay. You don't have to have the very first sentence in the paragraph be the topic sentence. Okay, the topic sentence was the second sentence in the paragraph, and chances are the first sentence is probably a transition from the previous paragraph. Okay. If this is a body paragraph within a paper, the first sentence in the paragraph is probably referring back to what the previous paragraph said and then connecting it to the idea in the new paragraph here. Okay? And that previous paragraph could have been about activist judges. Okay? So take a look here. So how does the paragraph start? It is very common to complain about so-called activist judges who create laws rather than applying them. Those complaining tend to consider this creation of the law by judges to be a violation of traditional legal principles, but in fact there is an ancient tradition of such creativity known as common law. Okay, that part I highlighted in the red is the thesis idea for the paragraph. Notice it's, to use the term I used a little while ago, it's the umbrella. Everything that follows in the rest of the paragraph is a discussion of this idea of what is common law. Okay, it's a definition, an explanation of what the term common law is. Okay, your paragraph thesis sentence doesn't have to be the first sentence in the paragraph. However, it should be one of the first couple sentences in the paragraph. Later I'll explain this. Depending on how big your paragraph is, it could be sentence 2 or maybe even sentence 3 if you have a particularly big paragraph. Okay, there. But you want to, if it's sentence 3, I'd want to see at least like 6 sentences afterwards following it in the discussion. Okay, you don't want your thesis sentence in the middle of the paragraph. It needs to be done within the first third of the paragraph. Okay, but I'll explain more of that later in the quarter, or actually fairly soon. Now here are some criticisms made of the paragraph. Okay, the information in the paragraph is a bunch of hard, unusual concepts. Okay, I think for people not familiar with what the law is, they would be difficult to follow. As Mary said, it's hard to understand. The paragraph is hard to understand if you don't know the law. And I think that's a real problem here, because you wonder, who is this paragraph talking to, okay? If it's someone who knows enough of the law to understand the paragraph, that person already knows what common law is, and they don't need it explained to them, all right? So since the paragraph is explaining what common law is, the audience has to be people that have a limited knowledge of the law. Therefore, the paragraph should take more time explaining its terms. It should think of its audience as people who are intelligent, curious people with a degree of education, a level of education, okay, but who are not familiar with these terms, all right? And what I would say is, again, I would say the exact same thing was said in paragraph 3. This needs to not be one paragraph. This needs to be several paragraphs. This needs to be broken up into some sort of sub-ideas and then expanded out. So this should at least be 2 to 3 paragraphs long, what was listed there. Okay, brings us to paragraph 5. This is if those of you remember the 2012 season, the famous debacle with the referees, okay? Now, one of the compliments the paragraph got that I agree with very much is that the paragraph has good coherence and flow from sentence to sentence. You can follow sentence to sentence in the paragraph very easily. Okay, there's a weakness. Now, several people noted it, and not all of you caught this, which isn't too surprising, because I think sometimes this is the kind of thing that the reason, this is the kind of thing you can learn in English 102 that you might not know already. How if something can have good coherence and not great focus. Notice it starts with one idea, that is the qualification of the replacement refs. Okay, the beginning of the paragraph establishes the is talking about what were the qualifications of these replacement refs, but at the end of the paragraph it's talking about something different, whether or not the quality of the refs matters. Okay, it shifted its point. Okay, the paragraph doesn't have an umbrella, and it doesn't stay under an umbrella. Okay, there's no one idea that captures both of those ideas, the beginning idea and the end idea. There's no one sentence that captures both the beginning idea and the ending idea in the paragraph. Okay, it's got good coherence and flow, but it's got bad focus. The topic changed. The image that I like to think of is like you and your friend are having this long conversation. I'm sure you've had these kind of talks where you guys talk for an hour, 2 hours, and if you go back and think about all the things you guys talked about, chances are there was no kind of like random jumps. Everything you said followed the thing you said before, but at the end of your hour talking, you're talking about something completely different than you were at the beginning. Okay, you don't want paragraphs like that. You want paragraphs to stay focused on an idea. And the fix here is you either revise the umbrella sentence to cover the whole paragraph. Okay, so you figure out an idea that captures the whole paragraph and make that the umbrella sentence, the thesis sentence in the first part of the paragraph, or you break up the paragraph and develop the parts. So you can have 2 paragraphs, one on the qualifications of the refs, and another on the whether or not it matters. And that also goes to one of the criticisms that people made of the paragraph. A comment was some of the terms need to be explained, like what Division 1, 2, or 3 college football is. Okay, again, someone who knows football will, to a certain degree, college football, will know what those terms are, but why not write for a larger audience? Why not explain those things to people that are intelligent and curious, just don't know those particular facts? Use your writing to explain things to people. Okay, and then finally, the podcast paragraph. Okay, that paragraph does have a good umbrella and does stay under it. Okay, but what I loved is someone called the paragraph a grocery list, and I thought that was a really good description of it there. That's not a particularly interesting kind of paragraph to read. Okay, it has information but no details. It lacks description. If there's one thing that I can tell students, and I think students at your level of development in writing don't do enough of in their writing, or seem to be hesitant to do. They feel like it's padding, or sometimes they even have students say it's BSing, which I don't believe at all. You can describe things. Stay on a particular thing and talk about it for a while. You don't have to go on page after page on it, but you can give some descriptions to things. Like these individual podcasts, you could have quick, short 1-2 sentence descriptions of them to sort of paint a better picture. Description is interesting. Ideas are actually not that interesting to read, but descriptions are interesting to read. Novels are very popular. Even the nonfiction books that are popular are quite often written in a kind of novelistic way, with sort of narrative description in them. Newspaper stories, magazine stories, not newspaper stories so much, but magazine stories, you notice, will have lots of description in them, even if what they're talking about is some particular idea, like, a problem in the environment or a social problem or something like that. Okay, and then finally, this is something a couple people said, and if this is maybe an idiosyncrasy on my part, what I would say is don't worry about conclusion sentences, okay, in paragraphs, all right? Some students are caught up in wanting to finish paragraphs with a conclusion sentence, and I think a problem that happens with that is sometimes you can end up sounding very repetitive. Like your conclusion sentence in the paragraph ends up saying the same thing that you said like 5 sentences before in your thesis sentence. And that is something you want to avoid, absolutely. You don't want to ever sound repetitive. So you want to have a sense, you want to have your conclusion paragraph finish with the sense of like, well, you're done talking about this idea, but you don't want to necessarily have something that's like, sounds like you're slamming the door closed on it as well. It's not easy to do, but it's something to work on. And as cases come up on your individual papers, I will talk about those with you. Okay? So that is that.